Hello and welcome to the Binge Thinker episode 19. My name is Jameel Raymond. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here as always. On today's ep, we've got a couple of different ideas going. I want to talk to you about alter egos, which is a very interesting concept that I've been playing with over the last few weeks. Also, going to talk to you about, I've got a little poem for you. I'm going to take it in a different direction this week. Might take a page out of Jocko's book and just read you a poem that seems to resonate with me quite recently. And then also as part of that, reflect on it. Why does it mean so much to me and why do I think it might resonate with you? So, lots of fun, interesting things to cover off today. Where do I want to start? You know what? Let's start with this binge thought, which is just something that is stuck into the prevalence of my mind ever since I stumbled upon it, which is the nightmare that is TikTok Live. What the fuck is going on TikTok Live? It really is the end of humanity. It is the undercurrent of late stage capitalism. The crazy, ridiculous things people will do on TikTok Live for attention, for some modicum of fame or familiarity. Are they trying to chase wealth? It just takes it into the weirdest and most wonderful directions. Sometimes it's pretty interesting, and sometimes it's absolute nightmare fuel. Like, surely anyone that's been on TikTok by now has probably just accidentally swiped through a few TikTok lives, and you're like, why is this Ukrainian family in a refugee camp trying to, coerce some sort of digital fruit currency from TikTok out of you and then say thank you for the privilege? And if they're not from Ukraine, there are others. They're definitely some fucked part of Eastern Europe. Like, it is, there's more children than teeth in a lot of these refugee camps. It's fucking insane. And somehow they've gotten connections to the internet and an iPhone or some sort of smartphone. And literally, there are refugees, or, they look like very poor villages at the very least, just begging for icons. I think there must be like gifts that must be exchangeable for value or food somewhere else in the internet, or at least in the TikTok scape. Like, the concept of creating a pseudo currency inside your platform, except for esports, which has just done that very well. On the social media platforms, I think it's a terrible idea. Like, you're just devaluing the exchange of currency for real money and fake currency, and you're willingly partaking in it. It's like TikTok currently has a function where if you have a personal account and not a business account, you can promote your posts using TikTok coins, which you buy through the platform. And I've done this as well. It's been part of my experimentation with the different forms of marketing on social media platforms, which we have to do for ACN. But, gamifying tokens of higher value for the dollar that you've paid for is a form of psychological manipulation. So, for example, you might say that your 30 Australian dollars is worth like 7,000 coins. Now, up on the front end, that sounds fucking fantastic. Sounds like a great idea. But in reality, they're just breaking down the relative value of that real money into smaller increments, and then we'll probably charge you more as a collective to use those coins in other places. So $7,000, 7,000 coins might sound like a lot in theory, but then it's probably only worth, or maybe things are worth like, $3,000 to get the most basic item, or 3,000 coins to get the most basic item, right? And then immediately debases the fact that you've spent $15 on a fucking worthless gift that you've just passed to someone on the internet, like a watermelon, to these fucking refugees. Give them a real watermelon, folks. That's what they need. Hydration, nutrition, shelter. I mean, good on them for hustling, but Jesus Christ. Like, there are some pretty insane parts of humanity's spectrum that are placed into the front of our collective consciousness on TikTok Live. And it's, beyond insane. Like, there's another dude who was asleep, and then he had automated every time you give these people, you gave him or sent him like a like or a share or like a follow or these digital currencies, these fruits. It could be a fucking. There used to be it was like a fruit or some other objects like gold, just weird random items that have some sort of perceptible value. He was trying to sleep, and every time he received something, he had made a bot or some sort of soundboard to deliberately play a loud sound in his bedroom and wake him up out of his own sleep. Like, who the fuck does that to themselves just for internet credibility? Fucking insane. And then sometimes, like the amount of ASMR that is on there, holy fuck, ASMR is not that popular. People just like the idea of scratching microphones up close for no good reason. Like, there are people like dressed with aliens that have like deliberately high cheekbones that have manipulated their fucking faces to look like aliens. And then all they do is just get like acrylic nails and then will just literally just lightly scrape their microphones on the metal grill part to get a little bit of that. Yeah, that's definitely not ASMR, whatever I'm trying to do. And apparently that's supposed to be stimulating and worthy of your time and attention on TikTok. Like, how many people could possibly be into that and want to go, yeah, let me get it off this weird alien cat lady? That's where I want to get my oral kicks. It's very hard to say the difference between oral and oral, which is for ears, like hearing wise. It's like it's even an oral complication, which is the great irony. That one's just for me, folks. But yes, TikTok Live. The reason why I was scouting it out, I was like, how effective is it really for people to use as a platform to grow their following? Because I'm thinking of new ways to engage with you, followers, and again, gain more traction on ACN. And I'm 500 followers away from 10K. I should have just said 9,500 followers, but I'm going to go on there as a live at 10K followers. It'll probably be early next week at this point, which is pretty good. And just to see what the hell is up. Because, I mean, what is the cost of putting yourself, on a literal stage, live and present on the internet? Is it really worth putting yourself out in that way for extra likes and more followers? Maybe more followers is part of my strategy. Sure, that's the whole point of social media, I suppose, is to really just, interact at scale with a global community. Sometimes it works fantastically. Sometimes it works terribly. That's the last time I went on TikTok Live, I saw Nazim Hussain get called an F-bomb by a 13-year-old. Some tween called Nazim Hussain a bunch of sticks on Facebook Live, and all he was trying to do was promote his tour dates. He's going to Perth, guys. Please, if you're in Perth and you listen to this, just go check out Nazim because he probably needs it. He's had a rough time of it at the moment just to fucking sell tickets. I mean, hey, how many times could you fling the F-bomb at me to sell tickets? A lot. What's the ratio? 1-to-1? One F-bomb per ticket? Nah, it'd probably be a few. It gotta be a few hundred. Maybe not a few hundred, but maybe like 5. I would happily be called an F-bomb for 5. Isn't it funny how F-bomb now means what it means? Right? And rightly so, right? I'm not saying I'm trying to say that God, I wish I had that word back to use. I used it terribly and I used it a lot improperly. Not that there is a proper use for it. No, there is when you call it a bunch of sticks, but that's by the way gone now, right? Yeah. It's not nice. It's not a nice term. I definitely think we should give that word back to the queer community. But it rolls off the tongue pretty well sometimes, doesn't it? Here I am lamenting the loss of the phonetics. The hard G, something about that The G and the T, the GT. All right, I'm dancing with fire. I didn't expect to be doing this sort of linguistic tightroping 10 minutes into this podcast. Holy shit. I was just talking about how ridiculous TikTok is. And my God, is TikTok Live ridiculous. I mean, yeah, late stage capitalism. That's what it definitely is. It is this hyper sensationalized concept of reality that you can have your 15 minutes of fame and connect with your community that you've cultivated or curated. But how much of that is genuine engagement with the people around you? Because I got to say, TikTok is probably the most synthesized of the social media platforms. And what I mean by that is that Facebook originally had a function to connect people. It was, if this was, Web 1.0 or social media 1.0, which it really was, that it had a function. It was actually fulfilling a need to connect with people much easier on a much simpler level, right? It was to connect people from your old high school, your family around the world, to find a common platform to share news and memories and interactions. And so when the peak of Facebook, it actually was pretty good. It served a purpose. Instagram became the next big platform. And with Instagram, it was about the aesthetic, right? It was definitely a ramp way to introduce an e-commerce element to it by having this aesthetic and more focused social media platform as well, because it took a lot away of like all the extras like games and poking people. It was literally just to showcase your creations, your photos, your memories, videos eventually. So it became a more focused platform. And then, sort of evolved utilization of content and media on the internet. internet. Now, TikTok, it's sort of just rapidly accelerating the consumption and the creation of media, but it hasn't really found its purpose yet. Like, it's certainly caught the attention of, the youth and the Zetters, sure, but it's drastically short and it hasn't found a way to deeply engage and create depth in whatever it's trying to achieve. Like, what is the function past the ridiculousness of the content? That's the tough question. What's the question that TikTok has to answer besides just being sugar? Because it's literal social media sugar at this point. And that's, falling out of flavor real quick because people are just increasingly frustrated about people that are trying to get popular on the platform. But there's no depth to who they are. And you need that because that's an essential part of being part of the creator economy, is to actually have a trusted and in-depth brand and a great personal brand for people to buy stuff from you. That was originally synthesized through repetition and word of mouth by non-digital brands, so consumer goods back in the day. That's why there's so much advertising and that you need to get word of mouth out there about your product. Now it's being, done and synthesized at scale, and the noises are so much louder, so there's so many more opportunities to buy different kinds of stuff, whatever you feel like. So how you differentiate now is to be authentic and to, permeate that and radiate that through your actions and the content that you create. And those who resonate with you and your message, will exchange value with you in the matter of buying products, signing up for Patreons, all those sorts of things. But that really only happens in the top 1 to 5% of actual creators engaging on the platform. And even the returns on investment from TikTok are not very good at this point in time. There's a guy called KSI, who's one of the largest YouTubers going around, massive in Europe and in the internet subculture scene, which I seem to be on the outside of because I have to learn about these motherfuckers 10 years after they've become famous. He was only getting, and he's probably got like 3 to 4 million followers on TikTok, probably more. And he's getting like only a couple of $1,000s from TikTok for the content he's creating. But he's moving so many eyeballs in TikTok's favor. So he's like, well, how are people making a living being creators then beyond this? So the idea is, you've got to have a product to sell because you just being a creator and being engaging isn't going to cut it as a revenue stream from the streamers, the platform at the moment. They're not giving that amount of money. That's why YouTube is so good. YouTube is 45% of your advertising revenue goes into your pocket, which is a fantastic long-term revenue stream, assuming they keep that level of revenues in the forthcoming years. And that's definitely part of my future strategy for ACN, is to, live on YouTube and TikTok primarily. And that's why I'm sort of complaining. I've gone a long-winded way about how weird TikTok is, because it hasn't really found its purpose, its fit. It is sugar and it's got the kids hooked, but that there is certainly something toxic about how rapid the content cycle is on TikTok, because everything's about a minute. And that means you are training your brain to only focus at such a short amount of times. So it literally is that sugar. It's that high buzz and that edginess. So how are they going to combat that? They won't. That's what made them popular in the first place. That's why all social media is like that. We know it triggers that dopamine and we are just stuck into it. I know I fucking am. Every time I feel overwhelmed, I'm usually hiding myself away on social media, just scrolling through shit innately. We talked about that in previous weeks. It's one of those unconscious softenings of reality by just escaping into your phone for a little bit from whatever is giving you shit in the outside world. So yeah, what is TikTok going to do next? Well, and also to go back to TikTok, that's up to them to decide. I don't necessarily know what they can do. It's just the vertical screen. It's so limiting creatively. It's a challenge. People are getting around it for sure, but it's certainly a challenge. Don't get me wrong. It's taking just a while to adjust to that becoming potentially a significant part of the way media is framed. But it's taking over. I mean, Instagram's changing to a full feed pretty soon anyway. So what's the big deal? But back to TikTok Live and what the fuck is wrong with that? It just goes to show you, the ridiculousness of the human condition sometimes. The depths that people will go to strive towards a perception of reality that again aligns to their identity of who they think they want to be. But to be doing something so, except for the refugee family, they're doing it to survive. But people that are just trying to make livings and just spend their spare time doing things like ASMR and these ridiculous activities just to get some sort of validation. It's an interesting reflection of what the unfocused mind will attempt to harness its own creativity if it doesn't have a more practical art form to invest into, such as, maybe that guy who is waking himself up at night could be a better musician, could just learn how to play guitar and get his creative outputs that way and chase his 15 minutes of fame that way instead of torturing himself with a fucking, with a sound machine just to wake him up and ruin his sleep, dropping his mood down, which would then cause him to think way more crazily because he's sleep deprived. I mean, what kind of ridiculous state do you put yourself into for these sorts of things? And that's what's so crazy. Again, we talked about identity on this podcast So many times people will sacrifice everything for the pursuit of identity. And fame is part of that too, right? If you want to identify as a famous person, you don't know, you haven't really defined what enough of that fame actually means. And that's why you see people who take their lives too far and end up in the limelight and fucking hate it, like a Justin Bieber, like any of the pop stars that have just absolutely had, every aspect of their life criticized and observed for the selfish wants of others, all in the pursuit of fame. Why? Because they want to identify as famous and want to be well known for who they are. And I think you're seeing that disappear a little bit now. People are, now more famous in their own little smaller circles. We talked about the fragmentation of the collective consciousness. Therefore, I don't think we'll have things like megastars ever again. Right? Someone like, for example, I was rewatching the Joe Rogan pod with Mr. Beast. Now, I didn't even hear of Mr. Beast, but he's got 100 million subscribers on YouTube, maybe even more, through all his other collective channels. So he has reach like a fucking country, right? But again, he's just in that little circle. So what does that mean for the future of creators that want to get famous and that want to align to their identity? Well, I think one, you have to be yourself to be a good creator nowadays on any platform. So you're going to get a lot more relief or a lot less expectations set by your true fans about who you are and who you should be because they've resonated with you at your authentic level. So that means you get to be more of yourself and you have to be a lot less pandery to get by as an authentic creator on a smaller scale. Because the smaller the scale of your following, then the less of their expectations, which are usually quite false, and then thrown at you about who they think you should be and who they are to you. So that's a positive, pretty useful. Is there another point to that? No, probably not. Well, there you go. Binge thought TikTok Live is fucked. TikTok isn't quite there yet. And I definitely went on a few tangents there, a few closed loops, or a few open loops. But hey, that's fine. That's the nature of this game. So, one of the things I wanted to talk about today was altering your consciousness by altering your state. No, it doesn't make sense. Altering your consciousness, altering your state through the creation of an alter ego. Now, this is this I want to explore this. It's a bit of a string that's followed me for quite some time. A book that I read, a Blink, called The Alter Ego Effect. And I just sort of stumbled across it. So the alter ego effect is by a guy called Todd Herman. And the idea behind it is that in all of the research that I've done around personal performance and being your best self and how do you improve blah, 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 how do you get to flow state, all my alpha big brain energy shit that I talk about on this pod. That's pretty much what it sounds like. It was exploring the concept of the alter ego and that there is a surprising amount of people that actually use it. And just, I guess, to explore the idea that altering your conscious state does not mean you have to be drug-induced. Altered states are really just manipulations of perspective, all right? It really is just, it's almost like, it is like Clark Kent in a way. The Superman analogy is taking the glasses off and when that, with that different frame around even your eyes, there's a different lens of perception about who you are and what your interpretation of who you are is. And it's interesting that even those at the highest level who seem to be these holistically integrated people, these strong sense of selves and identities that they have put out into the world that people have resonated with and people adore. The vast majority of them are, alter egos or not the truest self. And that goes, and that seems to apply across every creative pursuit. So the number one, the number one person that actually has an alter ego. Maybe let's just take this back a step. So an alter ego, someone you create for yourself, an alternative version of yourself. It might be an element of your personality that you want to amplify. Maybe it's a part of yourself that you are too afraid to embody within yourself for various reasons, probably fear, trauma, or previous conditioning. But generally, this alter ego, is an amplified version of the self. But it requires a significant amount more of conscious thought and developed identity than just the other elements to yourself that you appear in your day-to-day life. Being a brother, being a father, son, daughter, wife, all those sorts of different labels of identity. I think you know what a fucking alter ego is. Shouldn't be the first thing you've heard. Alter ego? What is that? I've never seen a Marvel movie in my life. What is this you mean? I probably do talk like this because I'm from the 1800s. So the number one person that has an alter ego is Beyonce. Now, Beyonce's alter ego isn't present in everyday life, although she did integrate it into her narrative and her canon in recent times. So her alter ego is someone called Sasha Fierce. Now, Sasha Fierce was actually part of her music. I think there's an album or a song called I Am Sasha Fierce. And with Sasha, that individual, that alter ego, is a further amplified and enhanced version of Beyonce. And literally within the name Sasha Fierce, this is what Beyonce's conscious mind, or a mind without limitations to what it could be, is embodied in this creation of the alter ego. So she uses Sasha Fierce as a way to get that extra level that is required for public performances. So when she's on stage, she's got the big shows to go and do, she's got the loving, adoring fans. They paid a shitload of money to come and experience the power of Beyonce that she amplifies through her creative music, powerful voice, strong physical body and presence. That's a lot to fucking maintain all of the time. And the creation of that embodiment is extremely fucking rare. That's why she is who she is, because she is one of the very, very few and extremely powerful and embodied creations of identity, and people fucking love it. But for her to embody that person, that heightened sense of self, she has to create something outside of herself. And the main reason that she does that, and why a lot of other people create alter egos that aren't superheroes, is that they haven't baked in the limitations in their own minds about who they are and who they could be. Right? Generally, these alter egos are, people that they think that they've idealized within themselves, but maybe are falling short of in their current experience. Again, probably because we talked about the trauma, something happened in their lives where they didn't think they could be that, or it's the only way they can give themselves permission to be this person, be this form of identity, because, it just feels so risky to have that aligned to their current ego to their current, reputation, right? And that's the fear side of the equation. But then you'd hope to, everything has two sides. There's duality in all things. But then there's also this heightened sense of awareness and creation of an identity to just have the mind play, right? There's an element to play in all creation because it's an experiment. There's an experimentalism to it. And you fucking hope that there is some joy that is put into that process. But with that even just shows you how much power there is in the potential of the creative mind. Because if Beyonce can embody an individual that has made hundreds of millions of dollars, sold millions of albums, millions of adoring fans, that is the power of the mind to form identity and to form a perspective and literally create an ego, a construct that people, resonate and adhere to and love and adore. That's fucking insane that you can get to do that outside of your own mind, but also while still in it at the same time. And that's why I find alter egos to be so interesting. And they're so prevalent. Like every musician, or the vast majority of musicians, have a fake name, right? One of the ones that I wrote down is, Childish Gambino and Danny Glover. Now, Childish doesn't look like Danny, but he is Danny, right? But expression, tone of face, costume, the way that you dress, these are fully formed identities that exist dually in the minds of these creative individuals. And it just seems to be common practice. And I'm sure it has the same elements across any of the creators that we've got today, right? Part of it would be they, trying to get outside themselves and their own limiting perspectives of who they could be. But then it's the embracing of the shadow side, right? It's the light side is the embodiment of that ideal, but also to get to that alter ego and to be vulnerable enough to display it to the world, you must be able to perceive some immense value in being that individual on the planet, on the world. And it seems to be a gigantic risk, but a gigantic reward. And it must be a compulsion too, because why else would you be doing it? You feel compelled to embody somebody else, to be your best self, or at least an element of. But all of the greats, anyone that's great at anything, is extremely, just singularly focused, pointed at one thing, right? The elite, the top 0.1%, they are the peak of a focus of a discipline. And, that discipline is created through deliberate, conscious intention, done day after day after day, and finding new and more practical ways and more effective ways to manifest that intention into matter. That's all great performers are in any pursuit. But we'll talk about that on a different app, actually. It's part of my mantras. One of the big mantras is discipline is divinity, which is basically that. But I'll explain in a better pod, sorry. Bit of a teaser for you, ladies and gents. So yeah, the musical monikers, you got Childish Gambino, Danny Glover, Chet Faker, Nick Murphy. There's plenty. Think of your favorite artists. A lot of them have to create alter egos to be able to potentially even tolerate and survive in the limelight, in the full beam of everyone's attention. It is potentially a defense mechanism, which shows how ill-prepared some of us are for the gaze of fame, and the expectations of having so much influence over people, is that can be too much to bear and too much at risk for you as an individual and who you are, because that beam, that condensed beam of attention on you, the adulation, the loving, and the expectations of others and who you are, and living up to that, that's definitely going to expose some fucking cracks in your own conscious and your own psyche of who you are and whether you think you can live up to that. And if you think you can live up to that and you are bold enough to step into that, into that arena, good for you. You're a fucking hard cunt. That's 2 for 2 on hard cunts on the Binge Thinker pod, guys. Letting it loose. So, what can we take away from this? I think the real interesting about it is that even the best people aren't necessarily themselves to get where they are. You have to keep going beyond yourself in certain elements to reach that next level. And I mean, we all carry these masks anyway, whether they are layers of protection, like putting something in front of us to shield from who we are as real people into the world, or is it a peeling off of the mask? Is it a reveal of the true self? Just, with the shadow and the darker side of who we are that's coming out to play. You think about the anti-heroes that people enjoy watching, or these anomalies of, you like your Tyler Durdens and things like that, right? Why do people love Tyler Durden from Fight Club? Because exactly what Brad Pitt says. He does the things that you wish you could do. He fucks like you want to fuck. He's free in the ways that you are not free. And you can feel those imprisonments within yourself. And sometimes you just need a fucking break from yourself. Goodness gracious. Don't we all? Wouldn't we just love a break from ourselves once in a while? And you can have that. You can have that with an alter ego. So, hey, if I start hearing name changes and new projects from interesting titles coming out in the next few weeks, I said out weird. I was like kind of Canadian, weird accenty. If I see a lot of alter egos popping up just because we've explored this concept, let me know. If you've got an alter ego, let me know. Do I have an alter ego? Yeah, I do. A little bit. He's like, I've got like a musical moniker that I don't use because I'm not musical at the moment, but I definitely have thought about releasing things under Carver. So Carver is, a musical moniker that I've kept in the back of my head for some time, but there is definitely elements of building an identity that I've worked on over the last little while. Couldn't tell you when, but fairly recently. So yeah, everyone's got one, guys. So if you've got one tucked away in the corner, that person that you look at in the mirror and that you sort of maybe flick on once in a while when nobody's around, that hard cunt that usually for men, I'm going to say this for men, your alter ego probably starts when you're fucking flexing in the mirror, pretending that you're in way better physical shape than you actually are. Oh, God, have I been there for many, many years, right? Like on The Simpsons when Homer, looks in the mirror and then he's all buff and then he's flexing, he's making his pecs dance. That's probably the kernel of most male alter egos, because that is definitely an emphasis on the ego. We are ego blind sometimes as men. My goodness. Like, fuck. Yeah, which is exactly what Homer does when he makes those pecs dance, but you look down at yours and they are jiggling, they ain't dancing. Yeah. women tend to think they're too fat, and men don't realize they're too fat. Something like that, yeah. They underestimate how out of shape they are, a lot of men. But then you hear the dad bod being popular. And I'm like, well, fuck you. What did I do all this for? For me. The answer was for me. Okay. But alter ego, I think I've rattled that off enough. It's worth exploring, right? Maybe it's a nice little way to play with your own consciousness. Start fiddling around with an alter ego, right? What would you name it? What are the things you would like it to embody, right? There's always this, we've always got this bit of cuntiness in us, right? Everyone's got a little bit of that cuntiest side, that little ha, you give, it's like that, when you think about a person that nudges a kid, that's what I think it's like to me. Like that darker side of you, right? Everyone's got a dark side. Everyone's got a shadow side. And we've been dancing around those topics, the things I've been talking about as of lately. But maybe for a bit of fun, lean into that shit, right? Because it just creates freedom. I mean, we know that the shadow side is just parts of ourselves that we have pushed away for fear of judgment, or it's been judged and it's been shamed in the past. But doesn't mean that it's wrong forever. And do you really think that the person that harmed you with it actually knew the degree to which it harmed you? And, whatever. Where am I going with this part? Yeah, like it might have hurt when you were like 8, but you didn't understand how small that incident is in the reality of your entire life. But you've held on to that story since you were 8. That's what a lot of childhood trauma is. All the things you think you can't do nowadays is just someone told you can't when you were a child, and you're such a malleable learning machine at such a young age that you just carry that into your psyche for the rest of your adult life, and it compounds over time. And then you have to spend just as many years, well, hopefully a few less years than the time it's been accumulating there, to get rid of it. And that is trauma in a nutshell, guys. For my finishing act, I'm going to talk. I'm going to go through a poem, and read it out. I did say that at the beginning, but I thought I'd reintroduce it. It's called "I Choose the Mountain" by Howard Simon. And I'll read it out. And to give you some preface, one of the things that I actually really keep in my mind is the "I choose the mountain" part. You know what? Let me just go through it. I'll read it out. Let's talk about it. So, "I Choose the Mountain" by Howard Simon. The lowlands call. I am tempted to answer. They are offering me a free dwelling without having to conquer. The massive mountain makes its move, beckoning me to ascend, a much more difficult path to get up the slippery bend. I cannot choose both. I have a choice to make. I must be wise. This will determine my fate. I choose the mountain with all its stress and strain, because only by climbing can I rise above the plain. I choose the mountain, and I will never stop climbing. I choose the mountain, and I shall forever be ascending. And that is "I Choose the Mountain" by Howard Simon. Now, it's not the most eloquent prose, right? But I think you can tell by the content of it why it resonated with me is the choice to do difficult things, is a deliberate pursuit of what is challenging, what is, almost incomprehensible. Something that seems extreme, but is actually very achievable with consistency and, with discipline. And the idea is that it's just interesting to explore the fact that you choose the mountain. We all have this hunger, particularly in the masculine, to find that depth of calling, and it usually means conquering. It usually means overcoming. The masculine is in this constant pursuit of freedom, of release, and it's engagement in power, in whatever structure that may be. The drive that we get when we are certainly engaged, right? When you're feeling your most powerful, is the drive of aggression and the accelerant of power, and you just want to go, I want to take a motherfucker on, right? There is a form of violence that is built into the masculine, of domination. And with that, people are losing that to a degree, because we see domination and, the patriarchy as this toxic thing. And look, it certainly is, masculinity has been becoming increasingly toxic, and unhealthy for quite some time. I'm not saying it hasn't been. And we are trying, people like myself and all of the good men that you have with you in your lives that are trying to become a little bit more embodied and a little bit more intrinsically connected to the feminine to become a safer masculine. It's going in a good direction. But yeah, there is a challenge to be masculine in this day and age. But you know what? I'm digressing from my main point here. We can talk about that another time. I've really got to cover the masculine and the feminine another rep. Don't worry, guys. I'll get there. But yeah, as part of this pursuit, choosing the mountain particularly sticks with me around that. And that's one of the mantras that I've sort of kept in my own mind recently, is saying that I choose the mountain. Because it is so easy to not do what you need you to do, to not choose it. It's so easy to not choose the mountain. And I did not choose the mountain of challenging myself and seeing what I was capable of for so long. But now, I'm on the fucking mountain. I am on many mountains in many different dimensions. And just like climbing a mountain, my legs are fucking killing me. But by repeating the fact that I have chosen the mountain, it drives me, gives me a bit of push. Because I choose to be here. And one of the greatest gifts and one of the most important terms and requirements and concepts that you need to understand when it comes to being a more conscious individual is the power of choice. The power to direct your will, your power into a singular direction is entirely up to you. And the skill that you can cultivate around that will ultimately govern the success of your life and how much you actually suffer. And there's another saying that comes to mind where it says, hard choices, easy life, easy choices, hard life. And that's very similar to I choose the mountain here, right? It's so easy to choose the easy way out. It's so simple to do nothing, to remain stagnant, but that will cost you in time. Because if you haven't accumulated a rate of growth beyond the entropy of what is existing around you, when things change, as they inevitably do, you're fucked because you're caught in your old ways and you don't know what to do next. We see people rot away, generation after generation because they didn't keep up with the times or they weren't pursuing themselves as a better individual. And like we've talked about before in this podcast, right? They're operating on fucking Windows 98 in a Windows 11 world. But it's not just about the will to be on the mountain. It is about the call that resonates to the mountain. That is the interesting thing to observe, to think more about, is why we are called to do great and difficult things. And that's even embodied in the stories that we tell ourselves. We've talked about more about this when I was talking to Tyson about Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, right? That involves an epic. All of our stories involves this narrative of great things. So this call to greater action is embodied in our DNA, because if it didn't resonate with us on that deep spiritual level, then why would we get better at anything? So it's almost like, in a way to really dumb this down and take this a separate direction, it's almost like inflation, right? Your money is always becoming less in value over time due to inflation. And if you aren't investing yourself into practices that are generating more wealth and more growth over time, you're going to decline in value. That's another way of putting, the way that you live your life, scumbag. That was a Brown Cardigan reference for the people in the back. But there is no choice sometimes. It doesn't feel like a choice. It is very much a calling when you do the right thing. The choices that you make are the digging around to get there. But that's because you're digging around yourself to find the source of that call to action, of that call to more. It's like hearing someone muffled behind a fucking collapsed cave, right? Behind all that struggle is the payout. And that payout is the path to who you think you should be, where you think you should be going. Very similar to choosing that mountain. The choice to climb the mountain, as they say, is about beckoning to ascend, right? The massive mountain makes its move, beckoning me to ascend. We are constantly being called to conquer, to overcome. And those that don't create friction within themselves, within their souls, by resisting that call. And that's honestly one of the prime poisons or prime ailments that we have in the human condition, that people try and drown with drugs and alcohol, with distraction, is the numbing and the drowning out of that call to more. The challenge is actually understanding where that call is coming from, what part of your psyche, what part of that true self that's been buried under there is actually resonating with you to come forth. Where is that? What is that calling mean to you? Because it doesn't say, hey, become a great musician, become a great creative, become a great leader. You've got to piece apart the echoes of that yourself over time through the process of the breadcrumbs that embody you and elevate you when you come across them, whatever activities or choices you make in your life. So, choosing the mountain, has a multitude of meanings depending on where you are at in your life. And I think it's very important to find your mountain and choose it. I choose mine every day. And, currently, because it's the early days, I'm looking at a fucking peak that goes nowhere. The peak is above the clouds. It's beyond comprehension and thought, literally. The thoughts that are clouds in my existence that pass through, they haven't even been able to manifest whatever I am pursuing to actually be real. And that's an interesting place to be in. But I choose to climb that mountain to find out what is up there. And I cannot get down. I cannot get off this mountain. I'm either going to fall off or I'm going to get there. And I'm going to have no fucking idea what it is. Maybe it's one of those sky burials that the Tibetans do, where I end up just fucking dying on this hill and the vultures pick up my bones. But hey, I got there, right? And it'd be a pretty sweet view to fucking finish on. I shouldn't think this is going to fucking kill me, this job. God damn. I'm trying to make jokes on the internet. Fuck's sake. So morbid. So morbid. But choosing the mountain. I know there's a bunch of bad motherfuckers that listen to this podcast that are choosing mountains every day. And they're on those mountains in various ways or forms. And that's just something that you should remember, right? It is a fucking mountain. It's going to take a long time. It's complex. It's dangerous. And it's going to fucking burn for a lot of it. But if you are on the right mountain, you're not getting off either. You're already in way too deep. And if you haven't found your mountain yet, start walking around. Start trying shit, man. Just give something you haven't given the time for lately. Give it a fucking shot. What's the worst that could happen? You've just taken a step in the right direction. You've created that momentum, baby. And that's what this podcast is about. Part of it is about how do we create and maintain momentum to get your shit done. But choose the mountain. Choose the mountain every day. Know that you've chosen the mountain every single day. And it's, yours to climb. And the view's going to be fucking great when you're done. If you're ever done, right? And that's actually the last part of that, is to say, it never ends. And I've said it here before, it never ends. I choose the mountain and I will never stop climbing. I choose the mountain and I shall forever be ascending. Right? If you're always ascending, then the only way to know and take stock of how you're ascending is to take a fucking second and appreciate the view, no matter where you're at. Right? I'm, 5 steps up with the things that I am pursuing. Still a better view than when I was on the ground, but plenty more to go, and that's perfectly fine. But appreciate the process on the way. That's one of my biggest learnings so far, is love the mountain because you got no choice but to climb it. And that, my friends, is the end of the podcast. Thank you very much for your time and attention. That one, I think, was quite bingey. And what I mean by that is it definitely took a few interesting places, a few twists and turns. But hey, something to stew over. If there's anything that resonates with you, fucking reach out. Always happy to talk to people as per usual. Next week, why do I even fucking say next week what's coming on the pod? I barely know what's going to happen on next week's podcast. I have a couple of ideas, but I haven't cemented anything. That's one of the things I need to work on is actually having a plan for this stuff. But fucking, you know what? There is a process to just rambling around and talking a bit of shit that is fun. I mean, I've cemented this over the last few days. All I want to do is get paid to talk shit. That's really one of my key life ambitions is to get paid to talk shit. And if I can make that happen through this, then, God, fucking genius. Because this will never stop. This will just keep pouring out forever and ever. Forever, ever. Yes, you know where to find me. At J Raymond on Instagram, The Binge Finger on TikTok, Aussie Comedy Network for all of your Australian internet needs. I have fucked that up. Aussie Comedy Network for, I really brought that down into what? So many letters into 3 syllables. Aussie Comedy Network. Anyway, I'm getting loopy now. It's the end of the night. You know where to find me. At Aussie Comedy Network for Great Australian Comedy Daily. Oh, I've got some exciting news over the next couple of weeks around some productions and some new projects for ACN. It's going to be good. You're going to love it. Come to gigs, Foots Great Comedy Club, as per usual. Yeah, that is me, ladies and germs. I hope you got something out of this today. Think about your alter ego. Think about taking a holiday from you once in a while. Choose your fucking mountain and stay on it. I'm right there with you, you bad motherfuckers. I've been Jameel Raymond. Thank you, Binges. See you next week. Ciao.